Today, I'm waiting for the Encore. My guest is Dave Scher. Dave is a lifelong musician who's been working professionally for over a decade and is a rare Austin native. Most recently, he's hit the road with Texas guitar legend Eric Johnson. We share many of the same stages and peers, so it was great to finally sit down and chat with him. Please enjoy my talk with Dave Scher.
All right, joining us today, Mr. Dave Scher. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, Sam. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. You look so good in that studio. It's just
Appreciate
a beautiful home studio there. I'm jealous. That's nice.
Thank you, sir.
Are you in that room most of the day? Is that where you do most of your dirty deeds?
Half the time, yeah, I'll do some things like send tracks to other folks. The other half the time, I'm in the living room where we have more of a streaming situation set up, you know, like a PA, but with no speakers.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of your guys' streams, and it's
Cool.
definitely a pro operation. You guys got a good thing going. It's nice to have that set up. You guys are well suited for this current situation we're in.
Thank you. Yeah, we kind of prepped in mid-March, right when it started. We were like, what do we have to do? How do we survive? You know?
Yeah, man. So let's go back to that time. I mean, what were you and your significant other there? It's Andrea, right?
That's right, Andrea.
Yeah, and you guys are two exceptional musicians who obviously are professional musicians. Where were you two guys at? And you can speak more to yourself and include your lady when you like. But you know, what did you have planned for the spring and summer? And you know, how did it all get kind of kaput on you? And obviously, we kind of just touched on it. But what have you been doing to keep yourself busy the last 6-7 months?
Well, right before everything was shut down, I was on a tour, and Andrea actually joined me for some of it, both in company and also as a guest on stage. I was playing guitar and keys, some percussion, some vocals, and even bass on one song with Austin guitar player Eric Johnson. And I was in his band, his touring band for a North American tour he was doing called Classics Present and Past. And that was amazing. We left town New Year's Day, January 1st, and we were scheduled to be coming back home April 1st. And I tell you, man, we had a day off every 14 days or so, and these guys are in their mid-60s, and here I am, a 33-year-old at the time, going, hang on, guys, you know. And it's just incredible how they just keep going, and it was inspiring. And it was a really excellent tour, a really cool time in my life. And yeah, it got cut short, but man, I think we did probably about 85% of the scheduled tour. And then, you know, the bus did a literally 24-hour trip back home. And we started quarantining. And I just kind of was thinking on my feet and asked some techie guys that I knew what I should be doing. And I went down to Guitar Center and got an iRig and started putting up microphones on our voices, our instruments, feeding them into a mixer, into the iRig, and plugging the iRig into our phone or iPad and going on Facebook and saying, hey, what's up? Here's some music, and here's our Venmo and PayPal. Tip what you like. And since then, we've been doing that and some other things here and there, you know, like some like Zoom, like what we're on now. We've been doing some, Andrea and I both at separate times in solo situations have been doing kind of like corporate gigs on Zoom.
Those
And
are
it's
always
been
good.
great. Yeah, they're great, and they take care of you. And also, unlike Facebook, you can hear them applaud,
Yeah.
which is nice. I missed that very, very much.
Have you been able to? I know one specifically, a little lunch corporate gig where I kind of was in with those people and got paid nicely for it. But I remember the reception wasn't that great for them. It didn't. I don't know how it was on their end, and I don't really care that it wasn't good on my end because I don't need to hear them talk too much. It was okay. But have you had good results with you know a corporate performance on Zoom?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Zoom is definitely, if you're spending time on your sound through a mixer and maybe your visual with a DSLR camera or something, and you don't want it, and you want it to be kind of translated to your audience. Oh, Zoom works a whole lot better than, Skype,
Right.
or, it still compresses and all. But as far as a connection, I did one of those in this room over Wi-Fi, and that was a bad idea because I'm pretty far away from, not only am I pretty far away from our router, but there's a couple of walls and the doors were closed because I was making noise. And they said, well, you looked like you looked good in parts and sounded okay in frames. But, so now what I've got going on here is I'm hardwired. I've just got an Ethernet cable going into the computer, and it's 50 feet long, and the door's cracked open so that it can go to the router. So you learn these new ways that you wouldn't have learned had we not gone through this pandemic.
Yeah, it definitely opens up new avenues of, what potential in yourself and in your product and your skill set, for sure.
Everyone has become their own production manager, their own sound person.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. Sometimes, especially in the beginning, it was a bit frustrating, but everyone's getting the hang of it. Every time I see someone going live, it's usually top quality,
Yeah, definitely. So I definitely want to get into that, Eric Johnson thing, because I know that just seeing that, I remember you posting about it. I'm friends with you on Facebook and the like and stuff. And I know that was exciting. I want to hear more about that, but I kind of want to go back first, and I want to kind of get to know your roots a little bit. I'm always interested in when a stellar musician tells me what got him into music, who are the people they were inspired by, at what age they picked up the guitar. I'm 95% sure you're a multi-instrumentalist, but I know you're an exceptional guitar player. But where did your music life start? When did you start playing your first instruments? Where are you from originally? And who were your, early influences, genre and person-wise?
Well, I'm from Austin.
Oh, nice. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was born in Seton Hospital, and I grew up here. I spent my last 2 years of high school in Dallas, moved in with my grandmother, and went to an arts magnet high school that was a lot better for me because I didn't play football or nothing like that. So it was just a better fit. But my time in Austin, I was pretty interested in music from the get-go. And I think, as a kid in the booster seat in the car, in the back seat, I would yell out to my mom while she's running errands with the radio on, saying things like, that's a saxophone, or that's a guitar, and so hearing music and hearing it as something different than the other stuff I was hearing growing up, like talking and sounds of machines banging around or the dishwasher or yada yada, all the things we hear in life. Music stuck out as something that was intriguing because you couldn't see it, and I just was into it somehow. I wasn't sure what I was into, what bands or anything like that, but my parents got me on piano lessons, as a lot of kids of our generation did as a kid growing up. And that was my first instrument, and I had a little knack for that. I kind of lost my focus with piano when I heard the Eagles and started to understand the coolness of the electric guitar. And I got an.
And how old were you when you started piano?
I was 7. I was 7 years old when I started piano, and I got my first electric guitar when I was 10. Like a quarter size Strat, My dad taught me the first 3 frets, all the campfire chords. And so the first song I ever learned on guitar was Last Kiss. So C, A minor, F, G. That's a lot of songs right there, those chords.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And of course, F killed me. I didn't like F very much.
No, that's tough when you're young, especially.
But I was really into guitar, and I started, my focus started going down on piano, but I still took it for a little bit, and then finally I quit because I started guitar lessons. And what got me really into guitar, the Eagles got me into songs and how the electric guitar fit into music, and chordally what it provided as far what it added to music as far as a color. But as soon as I think I was watching Austin City Limits one time, and Stevie Ray Vaughan came on, and I was pretty shocked at what was happening on the screen.
Sure.
I didn't quite understand. I knew that I liked it. Same thing happened with Jimi Hendrix and Page from Zeppelin, and all this all got me into the guitar, the electric guitar. And then I got a little bit into the guitar as a sport. Well, I mean, as an exercise, like I got into Satriani and Steve Vai and all these guys that were making this sound of an electric guitar being played inhumanely fast. And God rest his soul, Eddie Van Halen, I started understanding how the right hand was able to fret notes because he started tapping. I thought, what is this? And finally, after kind of getting a little bit into shredding, I started listening to Jeff Beck. And that made me realize that the guitar was so vocal. And that was my kind of introduction to how phrases worked and how you could make people feel a certain way based off of what you did during improvisation. And he wasn't necessarily an impressively fast player. He was just making these singer-like sounds that I've never heard come out of a guitar, and I started getting into the song. Whenever I wasn't listening to Jeff Beck, whenever I was listening back to the Eagles or just songwriters and stuff, I would hear, what would Jeff Beck do? Because it was obviously like someone else sitting in to sing with no words, So that was really cool for me. And ever since then, I've always been trying to make a song sound. I've always been trying to make my playing in a song sound as lyrical as possible.
So would you say that's the main thing you get from Beck? Because, Beck's one of those guys who's, revered by handfuls of people, and they stand by him and all that. I personally never got huge into Beck. There's some Beck stuff I really like, and I actually got to see Beck live, Jeff Beck live.
Me too.
In my formative years, I think I was probably a freshman in college or something like that, but it was so loud. He was so loud. I had to move back. He was playing a festival with like BB King. It was like, it's just this park festival in Madison, Wisconsin. It was a beautiful day, and it was a great show. It was so loud. I couldn't believe how loud it was. But yeah, his playing in particular never really got me the way, say Hendrix or Peter Green or a few other people have gotten me. But is that what you would pinpoint his, what you're getting out of Beck is his lyrical thing, or what else do you get out of Beck?
Yeah. I mean, I'm really I'm a nerd. I'm really into tone and how to get tone, you can see in this room that I've got a need to chase after a tone, but I like his tone. I'm not surprised that it was loud at that show. When I saw him, just recently, when he was last in town, I saw him in San Antonio because I couldn't afford the Austin tickets. And it was loud, but it was definitely his front of house. It was the PA I was hearing. I mean, his amps were turned around. So, but that's what I gather from Jeff's playing is his lyric in his playing. And I connect with his, with the way he plays a melody. I think a lot of what he plays, in my opinion, a lot of what he plays is memorable. It starts to be almost, this is the best way I can use this word, but hooky.
Very cool. And so did you go to, you said you went to kind of an art high school,
Yeah.
and were you pursuing a lot of music in that? Were you also doing, visual arts and stuff like that as well?
No, that they had that. It was a high school where students were put into one of four different clusters, being music, visual art, like you say, theater, and dance. And I was in the music cluster. I was friends with a lot of people in the music cluster, and I was friends with a lot of people in every cluster, really, because it was so easy to connect with everyone, not only because of everyone being an artist, being a creative, but also because I had just moved from going my first 2 years in Westlake High School, where a graduating class at the time was 12 or 1,300 kids,
Wow.
to an arts magnet high school in Dallas, where all four grades, 9 through 12, equated about 730 kids.
Hmm.
So we were all pretty tight.
Yeah.
And there were no sports. It was amazing. It was the most, it was a pretty amazing time in my life as growing, to grow in a place like that,
Yeah, that sounds great. That's good. It's so cool that you got to do an intense. I mean, your schooling that's incredible. I haven't, to be honest, I don't know if I've met or heard many people that have had that opportunity at that age.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's plenty of people who are in the super virtuoso Juilliard train that have a similar experience. But, most of us here in Austin who are all different kinds, but roots music, blues music, country music, stuff like that. You don't hear about that kind of thing as much. Did you go to a college after that, another school after your high school years for more music stuff, or were you ready to go and be a pro musician after that?
Well, I like to think that I was ready to go. I don't know if I was or not, but I did go to college because of that arts high school. I had gotten the opportunity to audition for scholarship to go to a pretty expensive school, but I went to Berklee College of Music in Boston, and I went for 4 years. Now I never graduated, but I did go for 4 years, and I had a few credits left to do my fifth year, but I had a 4-year scholarship. So that fifth year was going to be a full-on 35 grand to get a couple of credits done, and they weren't credits that were going to be easily transferable to down here to ACC or anything, but
Right.
It wasn't a big deal for me because I just figured what I'm going to do with my life. I'm not really finding myself in need of a bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's,
you got what you needed out of the university. You don't need a,
yeah.
In our line of work, you're not submitting resumes to, with degrees as a necessity. It's
right.
They didn't play.
That's right.
Yeah. So how did you like Berklee? I my current lineup, well, I guess we haven't been playing much the last few months, but we're two young guys who are in their mid-20s now, but they were both Berklee grads, and they're both fabulous musicians, really well schooled, super quick learners, great to work with. And you are obviously in that same ilk of musical intelligence, but how did you enjoy it there?
I did. I enjoyed it. I wasn't the best student, but the thing about Berklee is not only is it a fantastic school in that it is, it's also a great networking opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
You meet so many people from all over the world who, like you'd mentioned before, who went to college but maybe they were ready. They felt ready to already go out and they would start things up, start businesses, start function bands, or GB bands, general business bands, cover bands. That's what I did with someone my freshman year. So my first semester, actually, I had teamed up with a fella from Dallas, Texas, actually, and we both made a cover band with horns and everything, and started working at making money playing, and by the time we were really through our second semester, we had had a lot of things under our belt and played a lot of the ballrooms in the hotels of Boston, and started making things happen. I mean, as far as getting a 9-piece band paid nicely. We did that for a while, and not necessarily anyone playing their own music, but a way to start working as a musician. And I got into, I'd say probably my last year of school and into my first, my remaining 6 months of living in Boston after school had ended for me. I had started a recording studio with that same partner and another guy, and we had rented a space. I had accumulated a lot of gear as far as instruments. This guy we went into business with had accumulated a nice console, and the third guy was just really a really good engineer and acoustician, actually. So we kind of started going that route. We rented out a space. We advertised a little bit, just word of mouth, that we were cheaply recording folks, and we were doing it in a way where we weren't really making any money, but our rent was taken care of. That was a fun experience, How
did you like Boston?
Boston was really cool. I really like Boston. It's beautiful, especially in the summer, and then the beginning of winter, the beginning of snow. Like when the snow first falls, it's gorgeous, and then it turns black and sludgy.
Yeah,
and that's
You did, your Southern boy. You did okay up there in the northern winter
for a bit. Yeah, I mean, it annoyed me, so here I am. I'm back, but I liked Boston. It was a bit of a expensive place to live, but I mean, here we are in Austin.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
It's a cool city. It's going to be expensive sooner or later.
That's right. That's true.
So when did you move down? I know you were just kind of left off there. You started your own studio. So how much longer were you in Boston after you were done with school before you moved back to Austin?
About 6 months. Okay. And by the time I decided to pack up my stuff and come back home, the other guys in the studio, one guy already left, and the other guy kind of took over, and he had accumulated instruments, a Hammond organ, a drum kit, and I was like, okay, good. So I'm good to go and take my stuff, and you'll be fine. Yeah, no hard feelings. In fact, after I left and moved back home, actually, the last like 2 months of me being there, I started recording my record, which is called Porch Talk. And then I moved back home, and I flew back up to Boston for like a month and stayed with a buddy and went into that studio to record more stuff, and another studio to record more full band stuff, and had that fella mix it and put the album out like probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 months into me being back in Austin.
So that was listening to Porch Talk. It's a great album. Yeah, I was just putting it on. I always like to get in the mode of it. Sounded great, and you look exactly the same. You haven't aged a day.
No, I haven't. No, but I haven't shaved either since then.
Yeah. So you're 33. So was that, the normal college age? Were you like 23 when that was, or was that more like 25 when that was coming out?
That was 2012. So I'm 34 now. So, here we are doing math. 5, 6, 7, 8. So that was 8 years ago. So 26. I was 26 when that album came out. Yeah.
So you came back right to Austin, and you've been here since then. That's
right. Yeah.
And you came in 2012, huh? I moved here in 2011, and for some reason, by the time we were playing Friends, which was probably 2012. I guess memory is not that good, but I thought you had already been kind of in that system for years. I had
been coming back to Austin in the summers.
Okay.
And I would come back and I would play with JT Coldfire, or my own thing, and at Friends and 6th Street, and do that for the summer. And I actually moved back. I moved back to Austin like the day after Christmas I got here, because I drove my car back to Austin. I got the day after Christmas in 2010. And then it took me a minute to get the album out. So I would fly back and keep recording. And then we started mixing and then mastered. And then it was out 2 years later. You know, I kind of took my time with that because the whole thing is, you know, pretty self-funded.
Right.
Pretty self-funded. It is 100% self-funded. So
Yeah.
it took me a while to get things going, you know.
Yeah, for sure. So since you've been back in Austin, obviously for me, I guess I moved, you know, you were coming back, but almost the same timetable of our permanent residence being in Austin, and, you know, our paths have crossed numerous times and we've seen each other play. And, but kind of what has been your main focus and artistic outlets during this thing besides your, you know, the Dave Scher project? Have you been lending yourself out to other projects a lot? Are you doing a lot of studio work the last 8 years? What's your bread and butter in Austin, and how have you enjoyed Austin being back here as a professional?
I've been constantly working at my solo career and taking my time with it, but that is not my bread and butter for sure. It's, if anything, it's my money pit. But my bread and butter for a while was I continued what I was doing in Boston, and I joined up with a couple of different cover bands, you know, and I'd gone to Men's Warehouse a few times and gotten myself between 3 and 4 suits that were all black and had them always ready for, hey, this guy bailed. Can you come play bass for, it's a wedding in Leander? Yeah, sure, I'm ready. And I was in a lot of people's Rolodex, you know, so to speak, in their contacts, as far as putting, because there's some cover bands in town that don't have a fixated cast. You know, it's just like a contact list and who's available, and it's no big deal. You know, so I rode that train for a while. I still kind of ride it, you know. I pick up things here and there still. I mean, obviously much less now, but I was just talking about it this morning with someone who's got me on something in November in a wedding that's pretty socially distanced. So I'm still involved, and that's a lot of bread and butter for me. And most of the time, as far as original music, another piece of my bread and butter is playing someone else's original music, and not a cover band, but I mean just other artists in town. You know, I've kind of done mostly that for my career, which is just being a sideman or being a session guy. Because yeah, I mean, I work in the studio as well, and a lot of times I work here and I send tracks to folks, especially now. You know, I've gone to one studio session during this time in the last, you know, 7 months, with where a full band was tracking and everybody was wearing masks and on opposite sides of the control live room. And I was kind of just, you know, the word is escaping me right now, but I was so worrisome about it that I would just go ahead and go into the amp booth and play in there just to make sure I was completely isolated. So one way or another, I'm still making it work, you know, whether it's playing other folks' music, corporate stuff, or recording sessions. But my own thing, I have things here and there, you know. I've got something coming up in November, but it's, you know, it's a public place, so I feel kind of funny about telling people to come out, especially my fan base, which is older.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, well, it sounds like, you know, and I kind of surmised this already, but it sounds like you're pretty much set up for whatever the world's going to throw at you, and being able to stay in that professional musician role as good as anybody. Because, you know, and this is one thing I'm jealous of guys like you is, you know, you started so young, you had the schooling at such a young age, and your skill set is so broad, whether it's, you know, you're a freaking amazing guitar player. And I've seen you just a little bit on other instruments. It's like, it just looks easy. And obviously your experience in the studio. And so you're one of these guys who, you know, like I said, I'm envious of, because you can seemingly roll with any of the punches and you're going to be able to fill another role. It's like, oh, that's not going on anymore. Okay, well, I can do this just as good. Oh, that's done.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I can do this. So that's good. That's a good place to be, especially right now.
Yeah.
But how have you, since you've been back in Austin, because this is another thing I like exploring, especially with Austin people. Have you loved it? Is it great to be home? Is it been everything you've hoped it'd be? Have you had your eyes on other places? Another thing I've chatted about with other people is kind of the lack of a scene, not in Austin, but in general. Scenes don't really exist anymore. Maybe that will change, but it doesn't seem like that might be a thing of the past with the technological age, and that everything is just online now, and especially with Corona, which is even more isolating. It doesn't seem like the scenes and different scenes popping up in different cities is going to be in the immediate or midterm future at any point.
Right.
But yeah, how do you feel about Austin other than some of the obvious things? Are there things you love about it that you might not think of right away, or things that have been frustrating for you? Have you had your eye on other locations through these years?
Every now and then I've had my eye on other locations.
Mm-hmm.
I'm normally been too chicken to pull the trigger, but I do every once in a blue moon. I go ahead and check out online a couple of venues and other locations and book something. And obviously it never really ends up being profitable, but it's a nice opportunity to go up, try something as far as getting the word out in the city that I don't know and no one knows me, that I'm going to be playing at this one venue on this date at this one time. Come out, and then some come out and play the show and have a good time and say that I got to do that, and I get in the car and drive back. Like I did that with Nashville. And I've done that not in the car but on a plane with LA, and I'm talking about like going out and playing my own music. I've explored it, but I always find myself sticking around Austin, and I don't think it's necessarily like a fear. I just, I'm comfortable. I could be more comfortable, but I've definitely found a rhythm as far as, well, how am I gonna? I'm making some bread. How can I make a little more bread? And I could just, and I'll figure out. I know the avenues in order to maybe make myself work a little harder and have the outcome be a little more comfortable for a second. And I wouldn't know how to do that in a new place.
Yeah.
I've thought about it, and I'll make it work one day. I don't think I'm going to stay in Austin forever. But some things about the city that I love, obviously, are the food. And I really do. I love the city. The city is just kind of a sibling to me, especially because I was born here and I've known it since I've been alive. So I have a love-hate for it. And there's what I love about it is all the things that make it so different than any other place in the world. What I don't like about it very much at all is how it boasts that, and how it boasts, like, live music capital of the world. Well, yeah, if you're gonna say that you've got the best car garage, best mechanic spot in town, you're probably going to want to have every mechanic working for you be well taken care of, because you need them to stick around because they're the best and they're going to make you look good. I mean, really, musicians are the ones that make the city look good. There's other things involved, like production and how to make these musicians look and sound great at a show. But those folks aren't getting very nicely paid either. So, I mean, it's kind of, that's something that I don't quite like about the city. I don't like how it's turned into that. But it's such a tech city now that I have a fear every now and then that Austin's just going to be like, well, maybe we're not the live music capital of the world anymore, and maybe we're fine with that. And it's just going to be, there's going to be no place to play, and then I'll have to leave. I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of want to just get into that with you a little bit more because of your native stature with the city, being from here, and then also going away to Boston, coming back, and then being on a similar timetable of coming back with me, which aligns, a certain arc of our two arcs are aligned in that way. But it seems to me like I came here in 2011, the very beginning of it, and at least those first 5 or 6 years, like into 2016, 2017, it was really in a good place. I other than what I've heard, I don't know much about the city before then, and I've heard a lot, and I've talked to a lot of people about it, so I do know through them. But it seemed like it had a great run for many decades, and it was just constantly doing great, 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 great. And I was here for a good chunk of the crest of that. So like I would say like 2010, 2011, and it took me about a year, 18 months to kind of get a project going and be a part of the scene. So I had a good 3-4 years there where it was pretty awesome. I mean, it was that time when all these new places were opening up. There was just a ton of new places. There was still a ton of competition, but there were really a lot of, new paying gigs. Some of the old haunts were still rocking hard, like whether it be 6th Street was still going pretty strong or like Hole in the Wall and you name it. And then it started to, the lights started to go off a little bit. 6th Street started becoming what it is now, which is a totally different thing. Yeah. And places like Rainey, which was like this phenomenon of popping up, presenting all these opportunities for like 12, 18 months, and then very quickly becoming some bastardized non-music entity at all. And of course, you had that little explosion on the east side, which had all these different little things popping up, and there's still some good stuff over there, but it's definitely like gentrification ground zero over there now. And anyway, I'm kind of roundabout way of saying, I noticed a noticeable decline in our opportunities probably a good year and a half, 2 years ago. The surplus of musicians never died down. There's always been so much competition, new people coming in, the same people staying, and then it just hit this point where it was like, well, some of these places are starting to close down. Some of these places, the business isn't good anymore. And anyway, I was just noticing it was, and then of course now COVID's hit. So, to speak to what you were just saying, I mean, that almost seems, I think if we're going to pull out of this thing, it would almost be a surprise if it doesn't enter that just, see you later, Live Music Capital title. Of course, where else is going to be a Live Music Capital? I don't know. But yeah, I mean, so I guess after saying all that, my question to you is, did you notice the same thing I noticed? Like there was a decline starting about 2 years ago. And now that this is hit, all bets are off, and it's, we have to do what you're doing, what I'm doing, what everyone's doing. It's just, you got to be clever and you got to find a lot of different avenues to create, to make money. And the live music thing it ain't never going to be what it was. But I know that was kind of a ramble, but I just wanted to get the perspective crammed in there.
I ramble all the time about that. I did that before COVID.
Yeah.
And, and I thought it was bad then. And now here we are. I mean, I feel as though I saw a decline before that, but what you experienced, I experienced as well. I saw that happening. The crest you talk about in between 2011 and 15 or so, that was, there was some cool things happening and there was some shady things happening. And
sure.
I was involved. I've been involved in a lot of corporate work in Austin. And that's where you notice a couple of different coins, or sides of the coin. You can, if you play your cards right and you present yourself right with a package or however you want to present it to those that hold the keys to the kingdom, as I like to say, you can really do well for yourself financially. And, I would still play Sixth Street, as you've seen in those years. And then I would also like take a trio with a small PA and a very, very simple illumination setup, a couple of park hands that would get really hot. And sometimes I would even bring a drum kit and a bass amp and tell the two guys that were playing with me to just show up to the, to the Hyatt, and parking is validated. And we're going to play for 45 minutes. I'm going to give you $250 or $300, and these clients would be paying me for a trio, upwards of 1,500 or $2,000. This was obviously I was putting in a little more work than guys that were just showing up to play my gear. But I mean, I get it. That's maybe that's not something I want to make so totally public, but it was just in case musicians were playing with me. But I don't care. It's fine. It's all kind of understood,
No,
especially in a corporate world.
Yeah, any working musician is going to take a 45-minute, $250 payday. I mean, that's, especially if it's someone else's equipment, that's like wham bam, thank you ma'am, see you later.
Yeah, that's great. So those would come up a lot, and I would be doing great for a while. And the other side of the coin is, you're bringing production, you're bringing PA, you're bringing lights, and things happen last minute. Like, do you have a wireless mic? We need to have speeches. So I've learned to just have that on me all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, you mind if I get to the stage or performance area, about 2.5, 3 hours before downbeat? And they'd say, oh, we weren't expecting that you'd need that much time to set up a PA. And we were thinking you'd get here about half hour before you start, just to plug in. We're going to have a power strip there for you. Oh, okay. And things of that nature. And sometimes parking wasn't comped, and sometimes parking was comped, but it was across the street. Sometimes load in was not completely flat, so everything you had on wheels, you had to lift over a step. One curb ruins load in. Because everything that I have on wheels, everything that I don't have on wheels stacks on top of the things that are on wheels.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as it's flat, as long as there's elevators, as long as there's ramps, you name it. The stage can have steps. I don't care. I need to get to the stage flat. And if I'm flat, I can load in very quickly. And it's not really a difficult thing to provide, or rather to think about when you're thinking about having an event. But I digress. I mean, a lot of times the entertainment for a corporate event or a private party, even for not a business, is just, there's a lot of things that are overlooked. It's natural to overlook things that maybe you don't have experience with, but they make the gig really difficult. And a lot of times the person who is the client is not, you don't see them. Sometimes they hire a liaison, like a event coordinator, and they can be a lot of work. They can get mad at you right off the bat just because you're there.
Yeah.
So there's a couple sides of the coin, and I would come back to 6th Street and make $45 here and there and have a ball. And my soul would be fed because all my friends are around, and some of them would come sit in. It was just such another side of the coin. But I wasn't able to feed myself that day.
Yeah.
So I've seen Austin kind of go in this direction of where it's gone, like especially in the tech industry, where something is being introduced, like a new app or something like that, but they're going to introduce it with a party, and that party, they want a band because they're in Austin. So why get a DJ when you're in Austin?
Yeah.
And here we are again on this on a difficult gig. Sometimes, not all the time. And now, since COVID hit, I don't know. I feel like it's just going to be the tech place that you don't you just present the whatever it is, the new app or the new software, or the new Tesla. I don't know. And you're not going to have a band because you're not going to have physical people there, So what are the musicians going to do in the industry? How does this industry grow other than people saying, move here, we have the best live music? Maybe not anymore. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a bit scary to think about, but I mean, I'm trying to be realistic,
Hey, Dave, your
Yeah. Oh no,
your
I see
camera
that.
just went off. Yeah.
I see that.
It
I'm
said
sorry.
battery exhausted. Is there a way you can plug it in?
Yeah, well, I can switch cameras real quick. I'm so sorry.
Don't worry about that.
Here.
I'll kind of keep talking as you're doing that. If we get disconnected, we'll just restart it. But you can still hear me, right?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, like tech seems to do, it kind of creates these semi-symbiotic relationships with everything it involves. So maybe as it becomes the tech town it seems inevitable to become, maybe it will bring along the music industry with it, or maybe it won't. Maybe it will. Ooh, that's nice too.
There we go.
Excellent.
Sorry.
No worries, man. Maybe it will. Maybe that's where a lot of musicians can make their money, is a lot more tech opportunities, whether it's a corporate thing. Obviously, that's like you say, it's a different bag. You'll get paid for it. It's not going to feed the soul as much. And so then the other thing is all these things closing down. It's like the industry itself is by definition already so fickle. It's already so unpredictable, and you have these, for lack of a better term, you have these tastemakers, whether they be bookers or PR or whatever it is, who seem to control certain things. And so then when you've got all these talented musicians, cool projects, and then you've got a ton of other things they're just doing their thing, and it's a product. So you don't know exactly if it's the highest quality. And then you've got a bunch of people who are in the tier below that, but it's just the surplus is still a huge matzo ball. And then where are these opportunities? What's who's earning them, who's not earning them, who's just getting them because blah, 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 blah. So, there's no way to see where this is going. But, my family and I had planned to move to Los Angeles before COVID hit. And that didn't just have to do with music. That had to do with a number of things. And now that's been completely kiboshed because of everything that's going on. So we're doubling down on Austin. We extended our lease. We're thinking about maybe buying a house within, once we get some things together in a couple of years. So we're kind of doubling down on Austin, and we love Austin. And we, like you say, there's things that are hard to swallow at times. But anyway, we've spent quite a bit of time. I want to kind of touch on your most recent awesome experience, which is working with Eric Johnson. And he's one of those heavy hitters. And I just talked to Henry Invisible, who got the chance recently to work with Bootsy Collins, which is a similar situation as you and Eric. So
super cool.
It was Eric. Eric's definitely one of those shredders in the same realm that you mentioned some of those guys earlier. Was he somebody you looked up to for a while and knew about for a while? And then when that call came in, it was just like not only cha-ching for the soul, but cha-ching for the pocket and all that stuff. Was it everything you'd think it would be for you?
Yeah, it really was. I mean, I was a fan. I was a fan growing up. And he had a thing about his playing that was pretty technical, still does, obviously. But I never really considered him to be much of a shredder because I thought his music was just so
I know what you mean.
Sometimes.
Yeah, it's very gentle. It's very,
and so is his tone. It's a beautiful tone. A lot of people call it a violin tone that he has. Mm-hmm. But he plays with such precision, much like a shredder does. Right. And he's been a native forever. He's from here, I believe. Mm-hmm. And he's made his climb, the way I see it, his climb to where he is now happened in such a different generation, where the kind of generation where you had to be exceptional at what you do. You had to be an exceptional musician, guitar player, songwriter, however you put it. And there were other people it was so common to reach out to other people in the industry, like a manager, a general manager, a tour manager, an agency, an agent, um, and you had a lot of people doing different jobs. And that still happens, especially in like a more of a tour situation where you're on a bus. And there's so many people that are in the tour situation where you're in a 15 passenger van. There's someone kind of filling a lot of roles, and sometimes it's a band member being a manager and all this. And Eric came from a place where he could focus on being the absolute best musician that he could. And I'm not trying to make excuses. I've always tried to be the best musician I could, but I do feel like I've focused on other things in order to get ahead. I've focused on. I dove a little bit into videography and photography but I mean, as far as, especially right up to COVID, I was still using a photographer to put together my CD packages or to put together my flyers, But I dove into audio engineering, and I sunk a lot of funds into this room. So I've done a lot of recording for other people, but my own music, I know that I'm sure my next album a lot of it will be done right here, and in a couple other studios, where I'll go in for, I don't know, an hour or so to do something small. But yeah, I'm going to do a lot of it here, and I think a lot of people have had to do that. Especially like hip hop artists. I think it's always looks good when they always like the way it looks when you're in a studio with a 48 channel SSL console and stuff. But it's a lot of, when it comes down to it, there's a lot of hip hop artists that are working with a laptop and an interface in their home.
Yeah. Because
they have to. And they are their own producer. And that's the way with a lot of different music. I mean, they're their own machine. You're your own, especially in COVID times, you're your own sound engineer. Before COVID times, you are your own public relations person. You're your own advertiser. You are your own marketing director. And I mean, working with Eric, it was so refreshing to be on a bus with three fellas in their mid 60s that don't know a whole lot about Instagram, and their career is fine. Yeah. Because they're in a way grandfathered in, right, to a time when they were climbing that didn't require you to know a whole lot about Instagram and to make sure that you're, I don't know, if you release a video for a song, for example, make sure that each shot you have is no more than 5 seconds, because people will lose interest. Right. I mean, maybe that rule applied back then too, but I mean, it was such a different time, and working with Eric was so refreshing to watch that you could do that. I don't know, maybe I can't do that because I'm not in that generation, but
yeah, those are definitely the good old days. I mean, or who knows, everything's so streamlined too. It's like you could never be your own PR person back in the day because you needed to send out physical copies and you need to get on the phone. And now it's, you can do a lot with a couple quick emails. Plus, I mean, if you go back, I mean, if you look at Mick Jagger or James Brown, or even what I've read about Otis Redding, I mean, those guys were also moguls, I mean, they were doing everything. So, all of us these days get the opportunity to put our stuff out untethered for the most part, unless we are in the, for those of us that are in the high, record label realm, which most of our peers are not. We get to, there's a certain amount of freedom we have to do whatever we want. Now we got to work our butts off on the back end, but yeah, I know what you mean. It must have been pretty the whole social media thing. I'm hoping, and something will probably just take its place if it does meet its demise soon. But I'm hoping that the COVID has maybe. It's like if you hear that story about a kid. If a parent catches their kid smoking cigarettes and then their parent makes them smoke a whole pack till they get sick, right? So maybe, just maybe, this whole COVID situation where we're all looking at our phones even more than we ever were, maybe that has the effect on the society where it's like, God, I just can't. It just makes me sick to look at Instagram anymore, because I have picked up a little bit on that, not just in myself, but in other people. It's like it has hit a breaking point with certain people. So maybe, but who knows what'll take its place? I mean, God only knows. But
well, it's kind of interesting that vinyl came back.
Yeah.
And it's a nice feeling to know that. I mean, certainly because it makes for a way more expensive piece of merch than a CD, and way more desirable piece.
CDs are going the way of the dodo. I mean, they're on their last leg here.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you have planned for the next 3, 6, 12 months, now that we're almost 8 months through this? God only knows what's going to happen next week. We'll see how the world survives after whatever happens next Tuesday. But what do you have planned for yourself the next chunk of months here?
I've got a really high quality CD burner here that I'm going to sell, for starters. That's not going to be used anymore, I'm sure. Actually, not even joking. I've put a few things up on Reverb to sell. Not because I'm panicking about funds, but I'm in this place now where, not this place, but so to speak, in my life where I'm trying to slim down my tools and work with what I've got, but not with what I've got now. Work with less than that. Mm-hmm. And I want to not have things be so open-ended. I want to make decisions based off of what I got. And so, I mean, that can go a number of different ways, I know, but I plan on working on music and recording music and releasing it single by single. I think that once I feel like I have enough to package together into one thing, then I'm going to decide whether it's worth printing wax, which is very expensive. And the way you make that back is by selling it, hard copies, not digitally distribution, obviously. So you sell them where? At shows. So I'm kind of like, I'm going to take this time to get my stuff together, so to speak, and prepare for what I believe is inevitable, where the world will open back up. And I'm sure I'm not surprised if it takes a long time, but the longer time I have to get myself together and get ready
for it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, cool, Dave. Thanks so much for doing this with me, man. I appreciate it. I'm sorry this is the first time we've been able to have a nice conversation, but I've always been intrigued by your playing and what you do. So I'm glad we were able to do it.
You as well. I'm loving this. It was great. Thanks for having me, Sam.
Of course, Dave. Good luck to you, buddy, and hopefully I'll see you sooner than later.
You too. Good luck.
All right, man. Peace.